Hey guys, and welcome back to another how-to video. Today we're going to take a look at not really a mod, but more or less a tool that you can use if you play with seasons. This is a animal feed requirements spreadsheet that I made up to basically help me figure out how much food I needed to keep on hand to care for a specific number of animals with a specific season's length. So I wanted to share this, so I posted it over at PCSG in the mod section for other people to download. And I think it may be a little confusing to some folks, so I thought I would just go ahead and do a video showing you how I use it and how it should be used. There's probably easier ways to calculate this information, but I'm not a math whiz. This is how I figured it out. Like this, you can download it. The link will be in the description below. Hope it helps you out, because the last thing I want to hear is that somebody ran out of food, or they bought too many animals and they couldn't care for them and the virtual animals ended up dying. The last thing I want to do is have virtual animals dying on us. So the first sheet here is for the cows, and there are basically only 3 things or 5 things that you really need to be concerned with, and they're up here in this variables section. Okay. So the first thing is the season day factor. I have here it set at 8. If we look here at this chart, okay, we have the season length of 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, or 24 days right here. So these are the different season lengths that are available with seasons 1.1. Subsequent versions of seasons may have different season lengths. And then the day factor, which is to correspond. So if you have a season, you're playing on 3-day seasons, then you'll have a day factor of 1. If you're playing on 6-day seasons, then you'll have a day factor of 2. 12-day seasons, a day factor of 4. All the way up to 24-day seasons where you have a day factor of 8. And basically what the day factor is the number of 3-day feeding periods within that season length. So there are 8 3-day season periods in a 24-day season. There is only 1 3-day season feeding period in a 3-day season. Okay? So beside that is the number of cows. So you would plug in here if you were wondering how many cows can I feed, or how much feed do I need to have, let's say, 50 cows. So we would put 50 in here. And let's say we're playing on 9-day seasons. Put a day factor of 3. Okay. Now over here we have a power food mix. And this is the ratio of power food that you use when you make your TMR. Right now I have in here 25% hay, 25% straw, 50% silage. So for a 16,000 liter mix, that would be 2 silage bales, 1 hay bale, and 1 straw bale. Go in here if you prefer to do 2 hay bales and 1 silage bale, then you would do that. If you like to just do hay and silage and no straw, then you would do that. But I'm going to go back to 25 hay, and let's just do 25 silage and 2 hay bales, 1 silage bale, 1 straw bale. Okay, so we are now set at 3-day seasons, or sorry, 9-day seasons, because we have a 3-day factor. We have 50 cows, and we have our power food mix ratio. Now, down here in the constants, you're not going to need to bother this. This is just all for informational purposes. In fact, the only cells that you can change are the ones up here. Day factor, the number of cows, and the ratios for straw, hay, and silage. If I go in here and try to change this cell, I'm going to get an error. Show you that error. Basically get this error that says the chart is protected, the sheet is protected, and you can't change it unless you know the password. I did that so that people wouldn't accidentally mess up the calculations. So once you have those variables plugged in, come down here and there's basically 2 charts that you really need to care about. First chart is the amount you need to feed for every 3 days for X number of cows based on season length. Okay, so this is the amount of food the cows, 50 cows, will need every 3 days based on a 9-day season. Okay, so in the spring, they'll need 6 to 300 liters of grass. They'll need about 1,575 liters of silage or hay, and they'll need about 9,450 liters of power food. Okay, now if you are going to feed power food, this calculator basically assumes you do not feed hay or silage separate. You feed power food, some percentage of the power food will go into the hay and silage column. Do not feed it separate because you'll just be wasting food. Right, that's basically what this next column is. This says total power food needed if feeding only TMR, 25,200 liters, which is basically the sum total of these two values. If you make 25,200 liters of power food and you have zero food in both hay silage column and power food column, it will fill both columns evenly all the way up to 100%. In the summer, again, you'll need 6,300 grass, 15,750 silage. So basically the food requirements for summer and spring are the same. You can see that up here in the constants factor. In autumn, you need more grass, more silage and hay, and more power food. Okay? And then in winter, you can't feed grass in winter. So that column is zeroed out. You need 21,000 liters of hay and silage, 12,600 liters of power food, or 33,600 liters of TMR. Then this will give you over here the power food breakdown of how much straw, how much hay, and how much silage you'll need to basically make 33,600 liters. The last column over here relates to the amount of straw needed for their bedding. Basically, without straw, you won't get manure. So in spring, you need 5,250 liters of straw to get their meter all the way up to 100% every 3 days. In summer, interesting enough, you hardly need any straw because in theory the cows are outside all the time. So you need 1,750 liters of straw per 3 days. In winter, the big number is 14,000 liters of straw every 3 days for 50 cows. The last column, or the last chart down here that you really need to be paying attention to, is the bottom row that is in bold. This is the sum total of the amount of product that you need to have for the entire year if you have 50 cows. So you need 58,800 liters of grass. Of course, with grass, you can't just mow it and store it in bales because it will disappear. The only way you can store grass currently is if you put it in a silo, and of course that may change with future versions of seasons. You'll need 210,000 liters of hay or silage if you're feeding the hay or silage separate. You need 128,000 liters of power food. If you do feed power food, then technically you really need 336,000 liters of power food in order to have both hay and silage and power food at the max, only feeding power food. And you'll need 84,000 liters of straw for the entire year. So that might not make sense to some folks that are kind of bale directed. So up here, I have this column, or this chart, basically reflects for the entire year, you would need approximately 42 bales of hay, 42 bales of straw, and if you do round silage bales, you'd need 21 silage bales to basically keep 50 cows for an entire year. Now, the last bit of information that's on this chart is over here. And this chart basically tells you how many hectares of a crop do you need in order to care for 50 cows. So if you're only doing grass and hay in grass, you need 4 hectares of grass in order to make enough grass and hay to feed your 50 cows. If you're doing grass with silage, okay, then you need 5.56 hectares in order to have enough silage and grass and hay for your 50 cows. If you're doing corn for silage, then you need 1.12 hectares of corn chaff for your silage, and then obviously you would need 4.06 for your hay. And then the wheat and barley, this is for your straw. You would obviously sell the crop, the grain, but you would need 2.32 hectares of wheat or barley in order to produce enough straw for your 50 cows. Now I'm going to scroll this down just a little bit, and let's see if I can get it so that there's enough. Shrink this a little bit. All right, so try to get this so it's all on the screen. All right, so if I change this day factor to 8, okay, watch the tables below. All right, the only table that changes is the amount you need to feed for every 3 days. The amount needed for the entire year, or the amount needed for the entire season, all of this is a constant value. It does not matter based on the season length. So again, let me change this as if we were doing 6-day seasons. See, the only thing that changes as far as these tables down here, why did I go in? Sorry. The only thing that changes is this information, okay? This information stays the same because the amount of food you need to feed is a constant for the entire season. It does not change. The only thing that changes is how much you need to feed every 3 days. So the longer the season, the less you need to feed every 3 days, but the amount you're feeding for the entire season stays the same. So let's compare what we need to feed every 3 days for 50 cows using just TMR in spring. We need 37,800 liters of power food every 3 days if we're doing 50 cows for a 6-day season. Now let's change this to a 12-day season. Now, down here, we only need 18,900 liters of power food for the same 50 cows every 3 days. Let's take this to the extreme. 3-day seasons, you need to feed 76,000 or 75,600 liters of power food every 3 days just for spring for 50 cows based on 3-day seasons. Let's go to 24-day seasons. Now we only need to feed 9,450 liters of power food every 3 days. But of course, we're feeding them 8 times that to get a total of 75,600 liters for the entire spring. Let's go in, let's value this up, crank this up to 100. And let's change this to 12-day seasons. As you can see, bales changed 84, 84, and 42. If we go up here and change our mix to 50% silage, you'll see our values are changing with respect to our bales needed. And our values are changing over here with respect to our silage breakdown on the power food. But in general, the total power food needed isn't changing. It's just the ratio of what is in the power food that is changing. So that's the pig. That is the cow table. Now let's go to sheep. Sheep are simple. Okay, so again, on the sheep, the only things we can change are the season day factor. Let's go to 4. And the number of sheep. Let's go back to 50. So the only 2 variables that we can change on this particular page. We need 9 bales of hay for the entire year to feed 50 sheep. Very easy to care for. Down here, we'll see the amount of hay our grass we need to provide sheep for spring is 2,025 liters every 3 days based on a 12-day season. Summer is the same as spring, autumn is a little higher, and winter is a little higher still. Of course, in winter, you'll only be able to feed hay. So to some degree, I would suggest just making hay bales and not worrying about grass bales and just always feeding hay bales. The amount you need for the entire year for 50 sheep is 36,000 liters of hay. Okay, so let's go up here and look at our total amount of grass needed to feed 50 sheep all year is 0.64 hectares of grass. Sheep are ridiculously easy to care for. If we change this to 3-day seasons, still fairly possible to care for them. We need 8,000, so we need 2 bales of hay every 3 days for spring. We need 2 bales of hay every 3 days for summer. And we basically need 2.5 bales for winter. Not that big of a deal. Still, we only need 9 bales of hay for the entire year. Go here to 8. Now, to care for 50 sheep, it's almost trivial. We need 1,000 liters for spring. And since a bale is 4,000 liters, we could basically, we don't need to give them any more food for 12 days if we simply drop 1 bale of hay into their feed bin. So if we crank this up to, let's say, 150, it's still very easy to care for them. We need 27 bales of hay for 150 sheep, and we need 1.93 hectares of grass to care for 150 sheep, regardless of season length. Now let's go to our piggy pigs. Pigs are fairly simple, but they just have a lot of food that goes into their mix. Again, we have our season day factor, and we have the number of pigs, which is our target. Let's change this to 50, and let's change our day factor back to 4. Represent a 12-day season. You'll see we need 6 bales of straw for our pigs for the entire year. Pigs don't take much straw. Okay, in the constants, corn is 50% of their mix. Cereals, which is wheat or barley, is 25% of their mix. Proteins, which is soybeans, canola, or sunflowers, any combination of that, is 20% of their mix. And root crops are 5%. So that's straight out of the game. That's a constant. That doesn't change. Down here we have these are the values out of seasons as far as what one pig will eat the entire season based on 6-day seasons. So we have 81 liters of food, one pig for the entire 6-day season. So let's see what we need to feed 50 pigs every 3 days based on a 12-day season. Spring, we would need 3,000 liters of corn, 1,500 liters for cereals, 1,200 liters of protein, 304, it's almost ridiculous, 304 liters of root crop, and 1,125 liters for straw for bedding. The entire spring, we would need 12,000 almost liters of corn, 6,000 liters of wheat or barley, 4,800 liters of protein, 1,200 liters of a root crop, and basically just over 1 bale, 4,500 liters of straw the entire spring. For the entire year, to feed 50 pigs, again, this is independent of the season length. So pay attention to this column down here. You'll see this value does not change one bit based on what I put in here. I could put 1 or I could put 8. That bottom row does not change at all because the amount you need to feed for an entire year is not season length dependent. So for 50 pigs, you need 54,000 liters of corn, 27,000 liters of a cereal crop, 21,600 liters of a protein crop, and 5,400 liters of a root crop, and 24,000 liters of straw, which divided by 4,000 is 6 bales of straw. Now let's go over here and take a look. If we try to figure out based on, let's say we start a map and we say we want to care for 50 pigs. How much do I have to plant of each crop? Well, we would need to plant 5.82 hectares of corn to get 54,000 liters of corn. Now this assumes you've plowed the field and you've fertilized it 3 times. If you don't plow the field, then you're going to need to boost this hectare value by 10% because plowing gives you a 10% bonus. So if you don't plow, you're going to need to plant an additional 10% more of ground in order to get the same result. This also assumes 3 levels of fertilizer. So if you don't put 3 levels of fertilizer, you're going to need more ground to get more out of it. Wheat. Now we only need to feed wheat or barley or any combination of cereals. If we plant wheat only, we would need 2.75 hectares of wheat in order to get 27,000 liters of grain. We only plant barley, we need 2.56 liters or hectares. If we plant a combination of the two, then we would maybe only need half of each. We plant, depending on what we put in there, but we only need to feed one or the other. See, based on soybeans, canola, or sunflowers, canola gives us the best output per hectare, so we could plant less by planting canola. Plant soybeans, which basically is the worst output for our proteins, we need 4.37 hectares to feed 50 pigs for an entire year. Potatoes and sugar beets. Potatoes and sugar beets have massive yields. We only need 0.11 hectares of potatoes to feed all of 50 of our pigs for a whole year. Or we only need 0.09 hectares of sugar beets for the same level of feeding. Over here, the last column here, the 0.33, this is what you need for your straw requirement. You'll see you clearly will get more than enough straw off of the wheat field that you need to plant in order for the grain. You'll be able to sell some straw based on that. So let's ramp this up to something fun. 250 pigs. Okay? So now we need close to 30 hectares of corn to feed those pigs. 13 3/4 hectares of wheat. 21, almost 22 hectares of soybeans to feed 250 pigs. A half a hectare of potatoes. It's still ridiculous. I mean, if they ate more potatoes, it would be a hell of a lot easier to feed these guys, right? So, let's take a look at how much food you need to give them every 3 days at 250 pigs. So, 24-day season length. Just under 7,600 liters of corn every 3 days. Feed these guys. 3,800 liters of wheat or barley. 3,000 liters of canola, sunflowers, or soybeans, and just under 800 liters of root crops, right? But if we look at the full year length, you need 270,000 liters of corn, 250 pigs. Let's change this to 75 pigs. Now we only need 81,000 liters. So to some degree, you could basically play with this and try to figure out how many pigs you could sustain based on what your field sizes are. If you only have small fields, then don't try to raise a whole bunch of pigs because you're not going to be able to do it. If you've got fields that are pretty large, you could probably feed a fair number of pigs based on your field size, but you may not have enough time to get crops in. Because if you're doing, let's say, 6-day seasons, you need to feed in autumn. You need to feed 10,000 liters of corn every 3 days for your pigs, 5,000 liters of wheat, 4,000 liters of protein, 1,000 liters of potatoes or sugar beets, and 4,500 liters of straw every 3 days for your pigs. You only have 75. Now let's play 21-day seasons. Now all of a sudden you only need 2,800 liters of corn, 1,400 liters of cereal, 1,100 liters of protein, 289 liters of a root crop, and just under 1,300 liters of straw for the same number of pigs every 3 days. So I hold that the longer you play seasons, the easier it is to feed a large number of animals. So that is basically how you use the spreadsheet. The last tab is basically the yield volumes and where I got that source information. You can go there and see all that yourself. But I hope this helped you make a little bit more sense out of this spreadsheet. I hope this spreadsheet does you well. Note that these values are not exact values. These values have been rounded a few times with various calculations, so expect some level of error with them. But I would say that if you expect, let's say, so let's say in autumn, this says you need 5,618 liters of grass every 3 days for 107 cows. You may actually need 5,725 liters of grass, but that's pretty darn close. That'll give you a pretty good idea of what you need to care for, how many bales you need in order to support that many cows. Now, this spreadsheet does not factor in reproduction, so do remember that if you start with 50 pigs, by the end of the very next year, you're going to have a lot more than 50 pigs. It's just through the process of reproduction. So that is not factored into this spreadsheet as of yet. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button. Please consider subscribing for more how-to videos. And I encourage you to go over to PCSG and the 3 Dudes Gaming Network. Both are really great web communities. And the link to this mod, or basically this spreadsheet, will be in the description below. So next time, guys, happy farming.